Did you know that most learning problems, including diagnosed learning disabilities and dyslexia, can be permanently changed so these high potential children and adults can have the opportunities and future they deserve? We feel great urgency to get this message out to parents of children with learning challenges. If the problems aren't corrected, children will suffer needlessly. They'll often take a lesser path for their future because they don't have the skills or the confidence to really pursue their dreams. This lesser path may mean not going to college or moving from job to job or even a life of crime. This is LD Expert Live. Frankie is a perfect example of a boy with tons of potential, whose learning challenges impacted his choices and most likely his future. Frankie was smart and charismatic, but he was also a scary kid. At 12 years old, he was already entrenched in a street gang, and all the students and teachers knew not to mess with him. I was a special education teacher in the public school, and Frankie was coming to me because he couldn't read. I really liked him, and I promised him I would teach him to read, but I couldn't. I didn't know why such a smart boy couldn't read, and my very best efforts didn't make a difference. I didn't know how to get to the root of the problem. In fact, at that time, I didn't even know there was a root that I should be looking for. Frankie didn't believe that he could learn, and I hate to think where that took him in his life. But somehow I knew that couldn't be right. When Frankie got passed on to 7th grade, I left the public school and I began to search out the experts who were doing the research on the brain and learning and attention. I needed answers for these kids like Frankie, and that started me on the journey that has led us here today. Welcome to LD Expert Live, your place for answers and solutions for learning differences, dyslexia, and attention challenges. I'm your host, Jill Stowell, founder of Stowell Learning Centers and author of At Wit's End, A Parent's Guide to Ending the Struggle, Tears, and Turmoil of Learning Disabilities. To get a free copy, go to parentsatwitsend.com. Let's say hello to Lauren and all of you joining us in the chat. Good morning, Lauren.
Good morning. Hello to everyone who is watching us live. Let us know that you're here and where you're checking in from. We love to see all the places all over the world where people are viewing from. A resource for you parents is our private Facebook group, Mom Squad. We welcome you to join. We support each other. It's a community of parents of kids and teens with learning and attention challenges. So you can find different resources and guides that I've posted in there, as well as get some support and answers from other parents who are experiencing the same things you are with your children. So I encourage you to join. You can find it in Facebook groups. Search the keyword SLC Mom Squad to request to join. And I'm really excited about today's show because we're going to hear from some of our parents that we know and love about their journeys with their kids. So post questions and comments, and we'll check back in at the end to see what you have to say.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. From talking with thousands of parents over the years, we know that when your child has learning or attention problems, you feel confused. Fault? Is it your child's fault? Is it the teacher? Should you be doing something different? What will relatives and friends say if they know that your child can't keep up? And then one day, your smart, beautiful child comes home from school saying, "I'm the dumbest kid in the class." And you know you have to do something. If you find someone who will really listen, they don't seem to get it. They don't really hear you. You get confusing messages, and almost everywhere you turn, you're told that your child will just have to learn to live with it. There are no real solutions. You'd better change your dreams. The future will just have to look different for your child. Only a parent who has been there understands. Today, we're going to hear from 3 of our Stowell Learning Center parents about their journey to understand and correct their child's learning difficulties. Kathi knew that there was something going on, and she said she just felt crazy because no one else seemed to notice. Here's my interview with Kathi. Hi, Kathi. Thank you for being with us today. We love working with Bella, and we're just so proud of her. She's going to college next year, right?
Absolutely, yes. She is getting to be a pretty confident girl these days, and I'm just happy she's happy, and that we found Stowell and moving forward. It's really great.
You know, she is doing great, but it wasn't always that way for her, right? When did you first notice that she was struggling?
Oh goodness. Well, you know, it's of course it's always a long story, but you know the main pieces were I always knew there was something a little different, and I didn't know how to pinpoint it. I didn't know exactly what it was. And in 4th grade and in 8th grade, we tried to do an IEP for her through her her school district because she went to a private school, and failed both times. She just didn't meet the qualifications. But you know, it was usually you go into a parent conference and they say first thing is your daughter is wonderful. She is really great with all the kids, and she has lots of friends, and she's very sweet. I don't have any problems with her. But then you know they would tell me, oh well, she's a little low in this, a little low in that, but she'll catch up. So you know that was kind of the basis. And you hear that enough times and you know something doesn't click, and she's falling behind slowly, and up and down. You know, so you know you get frustrated and you see their frustration. So you know, you get to a point where there's nowhere else to turn to. So
you know, there are kids. She was one of those kids who sort of flew under the radar because she was sweet and she was so good with the other kids and quiet and helpful. It's, I'm sure, you know, it's very frustrating. Then you think there's something, but the school says, no, she's going to be okay. She didn't qualify. And, you know, you are not alone in that, but it feels like it, you know, when you're going through it. So what did you end up trying along the way?
Well, you know, you do tons of tutoring. I took my daughters to private schools, and so I'm doing private school and tutoring. It seemed like it was never enough. But you keep searching, you keep trying to stay positive, and but you know, at the same time, like you said, you get frustrated, and the worst feeling in the world, I think, is you know that feeling of hopelessness, you know, despair, and nobody, you think nobody feels the way you do. So, and you see that in your child, and you know, and as years go by, it gets a little, you know, a little worse and worse. So you get to a point where I knew I never gave up on her, but I gave up on where to go and what to do. So, you know, that's when I told my husband, I love my daughter, I give up, but I give up on finding somewhere. I don't give up on her. So he was searching and I was searching. And that's when we found you guys actually on a website, searching the web, which I've done plenty of times before, but never would come up with anything. And we tried a long time ago to get some private testing, but it was outrageous. She was younger. We thought maybe she would grow out of it.
Right.
And then here we are, her senior year, and it's about to happen, and we don't have answers.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting to say the least.
And that's not an uncommon story. Your child is struggling just enough that you know it, but not everybody else knows it. You kind of get told, or maybe even think, well, they're going to grow out of it, maybe, but they don't. Those issues that are getting in the way are still there. So we're so happy that you found us. I know Sharon, the director at the Thousand Oaks Center, just adores you, and the whole team loves working with Bella. So what, since starting at the Learning Center, what has changed for Bella? What have you seen?
Her anxiety levels down, and just taking her time, and I think using skills that she should have learned a long time ago, but nobody knew what she needed. Mm-hmm. And so, you get excited when you start something, and your kid starts something, and you don't see them dreading it. Mm-hmm. So, she knew this was for her benefit, and we kind of explained it, and she was so on board. And going to Stowell, I'm telling you, if we didn't have Stowell, we wouldn't have made it through COVID. It was just that, and we started on virtual. We did everything virtual, and it was not. I didn't think it was a hindrance. It was finally we're getting help, the help she needs, and let's move forward. And she can make decisions now, like simple things as, where do you want to go eat? She could never tell me where I don't know. Let's see. Well, wherever you want to go. Now I ask her, she tells me exactly, where she wants to go and why. And she talks about her schoolwork. Never before did she talk about her schoolwork. Before it was not even attempting it. And I knew it wasn't being lazy. There was something there that was just not connecting. So I feel connecting the dots is what Stowell's done for her. And, grabbing that confidence is something she's learning now with the executive functioning, which is exciting. The only thing is I can't wait for her to use it in real life. Because,
right.
Because with COVID, school is not an option right now. So, I want her to practice it, but we're kind of limited on that. So I'm so glad that she can, do these things with Stowell, and the way they do it is such a positive way, and not the same old she was getting in school. She would ask for help, but it was never the right help over and over again.
And, it's really interesting that you talk about her really wanting the help and being on board. I mean, so often I think we're a little bit afraid as parents, to drag our kid to one more thing, but kids know that they're struggling and they really want it to change. And so, it's been so much fun seeing her come into her own and become confident. And we're really excited to see, what her college experience is like. We hope that it will be, hope that we'll kind of be past that COVID thing, and
right.
She'll get, the full college experience, because I feel like she's really ready.
Well, absolutely. I'm more relieved, because the thing you want to see in your child is that they can be independent, and I always used to worry about that. And, now I can see, the light at the end of the tunnel, and that once she realizes what she's accomplished, that the sky is not the limit for her. that she can do anything she sets her mind to, because she has the tools now,
Right.
and to make her feel like she's like everybody else, and that she can move forward. And starting at Stowell, and the process of trying to get your child help, it was really hard for me, because I always thought that all these forms and papers that they ask parents to fill out, you almost would think that they're judging you,
Ah,
but people that are giving the forms, they don't tell you what they're for. So the IEP process, they don't tell parents what's going on. So you're kind of in the dark, but everything that we got at Stowell, every step of the process was explained to me, and why. And if I had any questions, ask away. And going through everything, and explaining it, what she might need and what I thought she might need. I felt really reassuring that if we had any doubts or questions, that it was going to be answered, compared to, okay, yeah, fill this out. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, are they going to think I'm a bad mother, or I'm not taking care of their needs? Just a lot of things. So going to Stowell felt like a breath of fresh air, and that I was actually getting help, and nobody was judging me. And they wanted to help. You guys wanted to help. Makes a huge difference when you're coming into an atmosphere. So we were really blessed with that, and we have to thank you.
well, we have loved working with her, with your family, and thank you so much for sharing. There are things that, until you're that parent trying to navigate this alone, that you just don't realize. I never thought about how, as a parent, you might feel judged as you fill out all that daunting paperwork. And there really are answers out there. And it is certainly our mission to get that word out there. And I appreciate you helping us do that. Thank you so much, Kathi.
Oh, thank you. And I just can't wait to see what else Stowell has in store for everybody, because it's a great organization to be a part of.
Kathi mentioned that they thought maybe Bella would grow out of the struggles as she got older. And that makes sense to think that. But here's why that doesn't happen. Many of the skills that are needed for ease and efficiency in learning are basically in place by about 8.5 years old. Memory, visual, motor, and auditory skills are fairly well established by that point. By the second half of third grade, beginning of fourth grade, students are expected to have reading, writing, spelling, and basic math under their belt. And the focus in school then shifts from the basics to learning new content and refining and getting more sophisticated with vocabulary and expression and thinking. Those underlying skills that create the foundation for learning, the memory, visual, motor, and auditory skills, aren't ever really taught. But if they don't develop as expected, if they aren't pretty much in place by about 8.5 years old, they probably won't develop completely without intervention. So as students get older, they're working with those same inefficient or weak underlying skills, but the demands of each grade level are getting greater. This is why tutoring isn't enough. If you don't address those underlying skills, it won't solve the problem. This next interview is with Susie. Susie was very proactive about getting help for her son, Nathan, but struggled to really get the answers she believed were out there. Hi, Susie. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Finding help when your child is struggling can be really hard, and it can feel very lonely. And especially if it kind of feels like no one else is listening, which I think is a little bit of what you experienced along the way.
Yes, I definitely experienced, just with Nathan, I've been alone for a very long time, and I felt that I wasn't supported within the school system. So I always had to advocate for myself and for Nathan. And it was really, really difficult because when you asked for help, I don't think that I was taken seriously, or it was just something that just came along that they said, oh, it's going to go away. It's fine. But I think that a lot of the times I really felt I was on my own.
Mm-hmm. And Nathan is 18 now, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
when did you first notice that he was struggling? What were some of the red flags that you saw?
So, Nathan, it was really hard because, people may say like, wow, you didn't notice and he's already 18. And I said, you know what? I did notice. But he's on the spectrum, and I didn't know he was on the spectrum. I just thought he was just a normal kid, just very shy, very timid, but I knew that he was struggling in school. So what I did on my own is I would actually hire tutors. I would get people to help me at the house. And, the first sign was when he was in elementary, I think it was like 5th grade. And they said, oh, he just needs a little bit of help. And I'm like, I know that he does. But then every single year they would tell me, we love Nathan. We want 30 Nathans in our classroom. And I was like, but he's struggling. But then they're like, sometimes it's just a phase. It goes away. And so then when he started middle school, the same thing. He was struggling. I kept fighting for him to have great teachers, because we have great teachers, and we would actually put him in with teachers that had a little bit of experience with students like Nathan, but he wasn't diagnosed. So I think that during middle school, I just kept asking for 504. I kept asking for an IEP, and I was denied, right? So they were saying that there was nothing wrong with him. And I said, there is something wrong with him. And I just felt that nobody would listen. And I just kept pushing and kept asking year after year, until one day, I said, you know what, I didn't understand how the process works within the school district. So I just sent an email. I sent a letter to the school district, and that's when I got heard. So, and then we started with the 504 plans, but still I was denied for the IEP.
Mm-hmm. It's really hard, especially it's like you want your child to be good and you want teachers to love them. But sometimes then those kids don't get noticed as much as the ones who make a big ruckus when they're struggling. And, again, our kids are very smart, and they a lot of times can do just well enough that they don't quite qualify for help. Do you remember some of the specific kinds of things that you saw, like when he was trying to do homework or make friends? Or
Yeah, so Nathan is very, very quiet. So I just thought that maybe he was shy. And some of the specific things that I would notice is that he would sit there and he would try to do his homework, but it would just take him a very long time to do it, or he would do it very quickly just to get it done because he didn't understand. So I think that that's one of the things that I found. So teachers would say, well, he didn't fill in, even with the 504, he wouldn't fill in like, oh, he missed 20. He didn't answer 20 of the questions. And I would have to be an advocate. I said, either he didn't understand, he doesn't comprehend it, or nobody came to cue him. Do you understand? Or nobody came to ask him, hey, Nathan, how did you understand this question? Do I need to reframe it for you, right? So I think that I felt that they perhaps thought that maybe he was lazy, that he just didn't want to complete his assignments because he wouldn't complete them all.
Mm-hmm. And those comprehension issues are kind of hard to spot sometimes, especially with a really quiet child. They don't know what to ask, so it doesn't become really blaring that they just really didn't get it.
Right. So it was like time and time again, it was, well, he's not focusing, he's not paying attention. Really great kid. He does what he's asked, but I still have to be an advocate and say, are you cueing him? He needs to be, I need another assessment. And still I was ignored. It was like, I don't see that I'm like, he is struggling, and I just felt that, and I was so shy myself that I wouldn't say anything, but then I just, so I just kept getting denied.
Yeah. Well, I know when he came to Stowell Learning Center, we were so excited it was kind of like, oh, we just got to get our hands on this guy. We know we can help. And that wasn't too long ago. What drew you there? Because I know you really connected right away with Sharon, our director there in Thousand Oaks.
Yes. And it's a really long story. So he was, after middle school, he went to high school. I thought that I had Nathan prepared with great teachers, and I felt that that I was talking to I felt that if I connected with faculty, if I connected with admin, that he would get the best services, right? Mm-hmm. And even though they genuinely do want to help, but Nathan still struggled. And I said, I have to do something because I don't feel that Nathan is going to be prepared for the real world. I don't want Nathan to be just pushed away. I don't want him to just be passed. I don't want him to I didn't want him to have standardized material and say, this is what the standard is. And as long as he completes it, then, he's going to be fine. So I started looking for other schools. I started looking for, places where that can help Nathan. Mm-hmm. And I called a lot of places, and a lot of places also, they tested him. A lot of places, they couldn't help him. But I think what it was with Stowell was that, actually, to be honest with you, was that human connection. I felt that I was being heard for the first time. And after my conversation with one of your staff, Sharon, I just felt that Nathan was going to be helped. I hung up, and I was literally crying, thinking that, I really feel that Stowell was going to be the place. And it was, I almost felt like a relief knowing that there was a place that could help Nathan. There's a lot of great places, to be able to take children, but here I really felt that there was a connection where I knew that Nathan can grow.
And so what changes have you seen with him?
So at first I was like, okay, I am so excited. And I wanted to see progress right away, but things take time, it's steps. So, and then I took a step back and I said, everything is we have to take a step forward. And I really liked the structure. I really, really liked how Stowell designs everything. So they tell you, this is what we're going to do. So these are the steps. But when I asked Nathan, I said, Nathan, so it was a couple, just maybe a month or two. And I said, Nathan, how do you feel? He's like, I feel good. I'm like, well, no, but how do you feel when you're reading something now? So are you able to understand it a little more? And he's like, yeah. I said, so is what you're learning at Stowell, are you able to apply it to now your schoolwork? And he said, yes. But it wasn't until that a couple months later where he said, "Mom, I'm really comprehending what I'm reading," and that made me feel so good, because I know that as long as he's in this program and after our program ends, I really feel that Nathan's going to be successful and ready for college. And that was the biggest thing with me, is that I didn't feel, if I left him at the school district, I didn't feel that he was going to become successful after college. There was no way. He was at such a low grade level. And I'm really excited to know how he's progressing in the next couple months, because I've just seen so much improvement in his scores, and just in his overall confidence too. Mm-hmm. So he's a little bit more open, or he feels a little more confident. Even when he's reading things, I'm like, oh, Nathan never asked me to look at something else, or he's more interested in, let me get online. I need to I'll give you an example. So he said, Mom, I want to sign up for this Red Cross program, and something that he's never done. He literally got the computer, looked through the information. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm like, now he's telling me what his needs are, because he's able to read and he's able to comprehend what he needs to be looking for, if that makes sense, right?
Absolutely. And he's really starting to, think about what he's interested in and how he can get information about it. So things that are really age appropriate for him.
Yes.
So, yeah. Well, we love working with him, and we're very excited about the changes that we're seeing. And also, we've enjoyed the fact that he really wants this too. He really wants to make changes, and we love that. So,
yeah. And if I may, regarding those changes, is it does, how sometimes our students, he really wants to learn. He really, really wants to, and I just can't tell you, Jill, how happy he is in this program. I am so excited. I feel that he has a future now. And everything that he's learning, all the comprehension, all the fundamentals, I know that he's going to be able to become successful. And I just want to thank your staff for just being there for us from the beginning, because I was really lost, and I didn't know what to do. And Stowell has been, I know I will say this forever, it's like amazing, is just a big part of our life.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I think that there are a lot of parents out there feeling that lost feeling, like they know there's got to be more for their child, but they don't know, what it is and where to go. So thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
So we've heard from two parents whose kids went a very long time before they were identified as needing help. And you might think, wow, it's just so obvious to me as a parent. Why isn't it obvious at school? Well, one reason is because generally kids really do want to please and do well, so they find ways to compensate for the challenges, which sometimes makes them hard to spot. In a few minutes, we're going to pop into the chat to connect with you who are viewing us live today. And I would love for you to post what compensations you think your child might be using to manage or cover the learning challenges in class. While you're doing that, I'll tell you what I think is the biggest reason why it can be so hard to identify and really help our struggling students. We've talked before about the Learning Skills Continuum and about how those skills on the lower rungs of the continuum need to be in place in order for students to learn comfortably and independently at their potential up at the top. I want to show you a list of some of those skills. Just look at how many different skills there are in each area. I know you can't read this very well, but don't worry. You can download your own copy of the Continuum at stowellcenter.com/continuum. Each student has their own unique set of strengths and weaknesses, so there's not just one obvious symptom that a teacher would spot to tell them that there's a real issue going on. It looks different for each student, and often some of these skills are strengths for the student that they can compensate with. There are just a lot of pieces to the puzzle, which is why it's so important to us to use the Continuum to guide us when we're evaluating and creating a plan for each student. I want you to hear from one more parent. Brendan's daughter is a gifted child, and she was only 7 when she started at the Learning Center. Welcome, Brendan. Thank you for being here today.
Of course. Thanks, Jill. How are you?
Good.
Okay.
You know, as parents, we're pretty much willing to do anything for our children. But when you have a child who's struggling, especially such a bright little girl like Lily, it's hard to know exactly what you're seeing and where to turn. So, what were some of those first red flags or signs that you saw with Lily that made you think she had some challenges? And I guess in her case also some gifts.
Sure. Well, from an early age, we knew that Lily had a variety of gifts. She was verbal and intelligible at around 18 months of age. So that was, a sight more advanced than we would otherwise have expected. So she was speaking complete sentences. She has had a phenomenal memory. As she would read something, she can bring it back and recall months and months later with no big effort on her part. So she is an amazing girl, and her gifts were evident early on. In terms of challenges, my wife and I noticed that she had trouble, usually physically, in terms of her coordination. There would be times when she would be sitting on a chair, for instance, and with no other thing happening, she might fall out of the chair, or she would seem a little encumbered in terms of how she would walk and move. She had some issues as time went on with the fluidity of her speech, her normal conversation being interrupted, not in terms of a stutter, although it at times would sound like it, but in terms of her repeating the last words of prior parts of her sentences. So there were some signs that she needed some help.
And so when you noticed those struggles, especially again with her being so bright, obviously, what was some of the advice that you got from other people in your life?
I talked with my wife about this. I mean, for that matter, I've talked about this with my wife overall in preparation for our interview. The advice that we got from people was not so helpful, because those people were thinking about Lily's gifts, her strengths, which were evident and people could see that. But they thought that because Lily was so gifted, that any issues she would have weren't things to be overly concerned about. We had our daycare provider at the time when she was growing up, when asked about what advice she would have, she just kind of shrugged it off and seemed to think that because Lily had so many talents and gifts, that this was not going to be any kind of difficulty for her to eventually deal with. But as a parent, that's not really a satisfying answer, right? We want to be able to help our kids to live their lives without having to deal with things holding them back, no matter if they can eventually overcome them to some degree. without our help. But it's our job as
Right.
parents, I think, to help them with that.
Right. And that is one of the things we see with our gifted kids, is that they just are able to, manage well enough, but it doesn't mean that they're thriving.
Right.
And so when you see that disconnect as a parent, that that's not exactly right.
Right. They're compensating rather
Right.
than actually thriving, as you're saying. So it's kind of like they're, not to be too loose with my terminology, the walking wounded. They have things that they're still dealing with, baggage that they're carrying, and they're using their strengths to try to get past that. But that doesn't change the fact that they have challenges.
Right. Exactly. So why did you decide to get Lily started at Stowell Learning Center? What clicked for you as you were researching?
Yep. It turned out that we found out about Stowell, and given that we're in Michigan and you're in California, that was kind of a more, I don't want to say chance thing, but it came about because my daughter is involved with the Institute for Educational Advancement, and had done some classes there and had been involved with programs there. And my wife and I had got a notice for a support group for, gifted children with challenges. And we attended that, and the Stowell Center was mentioned during that web broadcast. And we took a look at the offerings that the Stowell Center had, and those matched up well with what we thought were areas of concern, call it, areas where we wanted to see if we could help Lily further develop. So in terms of the offerings, the breadth of offerings really for things like physical coordination, mental exercises, those appealed to us in terms of covering a range of Lily's potential. So that attracted us to the Stowell Center. That and the fact that we could actually do our program online, where in earlier times we would maybe not have that opportunity simply because we didn't live locally to a center.
Right. And so you've been completely remote the whole time throughout her program. How has that worked for you and for Lily?
It's worked out well. We've been able to do our exercises, and of course, a lot of the activity was self-paced. So in addition to meeting with our therapist on a weekly basis, in the beginning it was more frequent. Of course, it was several times in a week. But we were able offline to go through the exercises that had been provided for us with the AMPS material and the later exercises that we'd gotten, and be somewhat self-paced, but also we were monitored by our therapist to make sure that we were going according to a plan. She would give us our schedules for exercises for a given week, and we would follow those and coordinate our reporting of results to make sure that our findings during the exercises that we do would be synchronized to a Google document so that they could be reviewed later. So.
And what kind of progress have you noticed with Lily?
We've noticed a lot of positive developments with Lily. Her fluidity, when I was mentioning that she might have some breaks in terms of the flow of her speech, that has improved a lot. It's not, I guess, you don't want to have the expectation where the changes are night and day. It has been a gradual process, but we've noticed a lot of improvement, significant improvement with how she's been. And as I started to mention, the fluidity of her speech, being able to be comprehensible and go through a conversation without too much interruption. She has developed more physical awareness of her body, the space that she takes up, how, her movements can be coordinated, where before that was more of a struggle. She has developed over the course of our therapy much better organizational skills. She's gotten more on top of her daily work and is better able to manage the demands, the asks, so to speak, of her school. And she's gotten better with focusing on her daily material, the things that she's asked to concentrate on in a given day. We've noticed globally a lot of benefits from her work with the Stowell Center. So we're very happy with that.
Great. Well, that is always so wonderful for me to hear from parents. And I know our Irvine team really enjoyed working with your family and with Lily, and they're very proud of her.
Yes.
And you're a great support for her. So thank you for giving this encouragement to other parents as well.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you for developing this. So thank you.
So just because a child is very bright, it doesn't mean automatically that all of those underlying learning skills are in place. In fact, sometimes our kids have real discrepancies between their strengths and their weaknesses, as Lily did. She was very strong in some high-level skills on the Learning Skills Continuum, but weak in skills at the very bottom level, the core learning skills, which are the developmental visual and motor skills that build the foundation for coordination, attention, organization, planning, and overall flow and fluency. I hope you've enjoyed hearing from some of our parents today. I'm very grateful to Brendan, Susie, and Kathi for sharing. This is LD Expert Live. I'm Jill Stowell, founder of Stowell Learning Centers. We're going to check in with Laura and give you, our viewers, a chance to share and ask questions.
Hello. So we have a lot of parents that have been commenting throughout, really resonated with our parent guests and what they had to share, a lot of very similar stories. So that's been great. I mean, just the fact that to know as a parent that you're not alone, that your story isn't, something that's outrageous, and what you're going through with your kid is something that someone else has gone through as well, as given a lot of parents hope. So we have a lot of parents commenting throughout the interviews. To answer some of your questions about what our kids do, to kind of compensate and to, kind of, compensate for the skills that they don't have. Raylan commented, I know my daughter is quiet. She is helpful. She can be a leader in class and stays just below her class when it comes to testing. And so we've definitely seen that in students before, where they fly under the radar, just like Kathy's daughter, Bella, or even Nathan. Teachers wish that they had 30 Nathans in the class, and we've heard that before, definitely. Lizzie Liz has a longer comment, and it cut off, so I'm gonna look for that. Behavior or simply shutting down is what her child does. My daughter's teachers have often said that she knows the material, but it's like she can't get herself to do it. This may be too easy work for her, or she just doesn't want to do it. She just procrastinates and didn't copy the information on the board. So visual processing might be involved. She gets in trouble for humming when she's trying to focus and do her work. So that's some auditory stimulation. Yes. OT has said this about our daughter. She is so bright and she will be okay. Her brightness will, let me find the rest of it, will compensate. Yes, so she was really resonating with Brendan's daughter, Lily. It's not fair that our kids have to struggle through life and not reach their full potential. So we can see that too, that some kids get by their strengths and again, fly under the radar. So those are some parents checking in. We have, let's see, Adalina, she is a current parent with us at our Chino Center. And she's asking of the group and parents who are here if they might have an answer, or in Mom Squad, we can continue this conversation. She's asking for the parents whose children were in public or private schools, how did you handle your child being several grades behind? Did completing the Stowell program help them catch up? Did anyone consider retention? And so we can have some parents comment below or comment in Mom Squad, but Jill, have you seen over the years in working with kiddos that have been significantly behind, have you seen that gap close? And then a second question, when is retention appropriate?
Mm-hmm. So definitely we do see the gap close, and our goal for students is that when they leave us, they are comfortably, independently working at grade level. The challenge is that it does take time, and you heard that from our parent guests, that it takes time. It's a process to build these underlying skills and then remediate the academic pieces. And that's the hard part, is that time in between when you start and when the gap actually gets closed is challenging. It is, because you're putting in extra work going to the Learning Center, and you're still doing lots and lots and lots of homework support. But certainly the goal is for them to get to that point that they are independent. And we've been in this business for such a long time that we absolutely see that, and have seen it over the years. In terms of retention, what you need to understand is that retention will not solve a learning challenge. What retention does is it does solve a maturity issue. If your child is very young in their grade, or, sometimes kids just tend to be young for their age, then giving them more time can be helpful. The challenge is that's hard to do as they get older, because there are a lot of social implications to that, and a lot of things that kids internalize about that. So if your child is 5 or 6, and you think, gosh, they're very immature, or they have a very young birth date, I'd like to give them another year. Great, do that, and tell them, you're just a little bit young to go to first grade yet, or whatever. But just be careful as they get older. It's not going to solve the problem, and you just have to really look carefully at the social implications of that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We have another long question and comment from Lizzie Liz, so I'll get the rest of it. It cuts it off. Thank you so much for sharing knowledge and support, Jill. Our daughter is 7 in private school, an A student, but she struggles with completing classwork. It's like she gets stuck before she can start. We got an assessment and have an understanding of what is happening with her. We worked with Michelle, who is our evaluator in Chino. We are trying to work out a few things so we can make this happen financially. Is this intervention looked at as the earlier they get it, the better? So that's part of the question. I've worked with her through OT and my own research, and let me find the rest. But when she's in school, she won't use the skills I'm teaching. She sometimes just shuts down. We look at this as the greatest investment, but I just don't know if she's mature enough for such a big intervention. So kind of a question about age, if it's appropriate, and is earlier better?
First, I just want to say the brain is amazing. It is never too late. So if your child is a little bit older, don't worry. It's not too late. We even work with adults. That being said, the earlier you can do this, the better, because you don't have such a big gap that you have to make up. And when kids struggle in school, it impacts their self-esteem and their habits. And so, the earlier you can change that and put a stronger foundation for learning under that for them, the better. And, I will say that my son, when he was little, I would try to help him with certain things, with writing or math or something. And he would invariably say, that's not the way my teacher does it. And so a lot of times kids kind of tend to reject what their parent says, but they'll learn it and they'll do it from someone else. That's just sort of the nature of things, I think. But definitely not too young.
Right. Yeah. Same thing with my daughter. So I definitely understand that. We have a question about layering in programs and time. So is asking, can a parent do Stowell's program and a comprehension program like Lindamood Bell at the same time to intensify the progress? Is more always better?
Oh, there's a lot in that question. Well, first of all, I would say to you that you don't need to be doing those two programs at the same time. We also address comprehension, and it's not that it would be in conflict. It would not. Pat Lindamood was one of my very early mentors. But it is not necessary to do that. If you're being offered it at school, absolutely, anything they're going to give you there, please take it. But and now is more better. Working intensively can be very, very effective and powerful. And so that is something that you can explore with us. We do intensive programs. It is not necessarily better for every student. And that's what we have to look at. And also some of the different kinds of therapies we do, the sound therapy, more is not always better. There is, a prescribed amount that is best. So, and there are certain things that take some time for the brain to really set it in. So.
Right. Yeah. And we never want to be counterproductive. I mean, we've definitely seen overload in students, and we want to prevent that as much as possible. We are looking always for functional changes. And so I know sometimes it sounds kind of, counterintuitive to say, okay, less is more sometimes, but if you overload the brain and you stress the brain, if we did a show in the past about retained reflexes, and that's when the brain is under stress, those reflexes fire, and a lot of times the higher cortex isn't receiving the message, or the child's in fight or flight. It's not effective. So we always try to look out for all of that. And that's kind of the beauty of this continuum-based learning, is that we're looking at the whole child, not just at one particular skill at a time. So definitely. We have Darlene saying, the last parent kept saying she loved the program. Is this a program or a school or both? Can a child continue at their own school and get a program from us?
We are a learning center, and so we work with students we create a plan for each student based on their specific needs. So we call that programming. We create programming for each student. We are not a school, so students are in school, and we work with them supplementally. And
Adelina is asking, what is the youngest age that you think would be appropriate to start at the Stowell Center?
We work with students as young as 4. We work with students as young as 4. We just need to really look at our really young ones and make sure that we're addressing real issues and not just, development. But we do look at that carefully with our young children.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Lizzie is just commenting back. Thank you, Jill. Yes, totally happens and makes sense. They get enough with our parenting. Thank you. So a big relief to parents. I think that hearing from some parents who have been in the trenches has been really resonated with some of our viewers today. We're getting a lot of just thank yous and comments throughout the interviews of parents just really identifying with those stories because you know, a lot of parents have been there, just being lost with their child through this journey of learning challenges. So thank you to everyone who's commented and who's asked questions. Again, if your question didn't get addressed or you want more insights from other parents who are going through similar experiences that you are, you can always join our Mom Squad. That is our private Facebook group. You can find it on our Facebook page or by going to Facebook groups and search the keywords SLC Mom Squad to request to join. You can ask questions of parents we have parents in there who are currently in our program. We have parents in there who have finished our programs. So if you want any advice on the journey, go ahead and join Mom Squad and ask. We have a lot of parents in there that are really willing to help. Another resource that we have is our Peace group. That is our parent support group. We meet once a month and discuss a variety of topics. We go through At Wit's End, Jill's book. This month is our auditory processing meeting. So we'll be talking about auditory processing skills, listening skills, and how to develop them. That is Thursday, May 20th at 5 p.m. Pacific time. You do need to register. It is a Zoom meeting, so you do need to register to get the link. Go to stowellcenter.com/peace in order to register and get that link. And I really look forward to meeting all of you and seeing your little boxes in Zoom. I always love those meetings and connecting with parents. So another place for you to get resources and ask questions about your child. Thanks to everyone again who's participated today, and just so grateful that we have these parents in our centers that we're willing to share today, because again, I just think that it gives some hope to other parents who are going through it right now with their kids.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lauren. And thank you everyone for connecting with us and sharing with each other. This is LD Expert Live, your place for answers and solutions for learning disabilities, dyslexia, and auditory processing and attention challenges. We're live every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific. Next Tuesday, we are talking to Adalyn Smith, an amazing high school student who has become a very visible and vocal advocate for those with APD, auditory processing disorder. She will help you understand what it's like to live with APD and has some very insightful tips for teens, parents, and teachers. So hit that little bell on our YouTube channel so that you can get a reminder, because you do not want to miss this episode next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific with Adalyn. Stowell Learning Centers are open for remote sessions and screenings. We're also seeing students on site with all of the COVID precautions. We work with children and adults doing targeted brain training to improve thinking and learning. If you would like a free consultation for yourself or your child, give us a call or visit our website at stowellcenter.com. Thanks again to our wonderful parents for sharing with us, and thank you all for joining us and sharing and subscribing. We'll see you next week.